We're bouncing in the red.
Yeah.
They can't see the red. You have to touch the red.
That's what you don't like to hear.
You're ready to go.
Okay.
Slam in there like a hurricane.
Okay. Good morning. Hope you're enjoying the PodCamp so far. Hope is anyone here really hungover? If so, if we get to a part that involves making an awful lot of noise, I'll try and warn you. Because some of the resonators can make an awful lot of noise, the way how you use them. So my session is called Stand Up and Breathe, and I'll be talking about vocal production techniques. And so here's an outline. I'll say, who is this guy? What the heck's he doing here? I'm going to talk about what I call the human signal chain. I'm going to talk about posture, resonators, breathing, and I'm going to finish off with some demonstrating some breathing exercises. You are invited to participate. You are not required to participate. This is PodCamp. You're not required to do anything, and I'm not going to go all Richard Simmons on you. Frankly, that guy creeps me out. So, you're free to join in. I know we have at least one person here who's gone through broadcast school, because it looks like he saw my slides beforehand. So if you feel I'm missing something and you want to throw something in, please. I'd like this to be participatory. If anyone else here has like singing experience or tricks, please let's share them. Okay, who am I? My name's John Meadows. I've been podcasting since October of 2006. I do a couple of podcasts, Smoky Times and On the Log. I've been singing steadily for 20 years and off and on basically since I was born. I guess a high point for me was a member of a choir that won our category in the 2004 CBC National Choral Competition. And what I will do, it's not up there yet, but I'll have a link to my presentation and some other links on Delicious. And so I'm going to have to go to the next slide, but if you want a link or something afterwards, just let me know. Okay, human signal chain. Quite often in podcasting, especially if you're into the technical side of things, like I like the toys, the tech, well, my wife calls them toys, I call them, production tools. We talk about the mics, the cables, preamps, amps, EQ, effects, down to post-production, that kind of signal chain. We talk about room acoustics and how to set up baffles, how to make sure you're not dealing with standing waves, that kind of thing. But I think what's just as important is what I call the human signal chain, and that's how the sound is actually made. From the diaphragm, there's a diaphragm under all this muscle. The diaphragm, which contracts, creates a vacuum, allows air to flow into the lungs. The lungs themselves, the vocal cords that actually make the sound, they don't make a whole lot of volume by themselves, but they make the sound. The chest is where a lot of the beef can come from. The throat, which is the most improperly used part of the vocal chain, and you can actually do a lot of damage, and at the very least end up with a very tired voice if you use your throat improperly. Resonators, and what a resonator, I'll be getting a bit to it more further down the line, is that's where you get the volume, because the resonators are basically air, and without air you don't get a whole lot of noise. And in addition to the volume, you also get the timbre, it's almost like EQ. You can affect how your sound is going to be heard by others by how you use the resonators. And the mouth in addition to being the final resonator, is also, you get the final shaping of the sound. Consonants, if you're talking with your mouth closed, it's sort of hard to understand unless you're a really good ventriloquist, and I'm not. And the great thing about this, compared to a lot of the stuff you might buy for, compared to a lot of software for audio podcasting, everything that we've all been given this equipment. It's free, gratis, no DRM involved, and you don't have to pay Microsoft a penny. I'm sold already. I'm going to start off with posture. And you can sometimes when you listen to someone's podcast, you can hear tension, you can hear they're in an uncomfortable position, even not seeing them. Like if people are sort of hunched over a computer, you start to get restrictions. If there's one thing I'd say to take away from this presentation, it's that if it feels like you're trying really hard, you're doing something wrong. Because yes, breathing, it's all about and posture, it's about energy and getting energy, but it's not about tension. Like if you stand like this, like you're back at a school assembly or a spelling bee, ambiguous. It's everything tenses up, and the sound, it gets uncomfortable for other people to listen to you. I was at a concert a few years ago. It was a choral concert, and there was a small choir, a rather famous choir from England called the Tallis Scholars. They do a lot of Renaissance stuff. And the recordings are really good, and so the sound was great, but one of the basses, he was hunched over, you could almost see veins. We thought, he's going to explode, and there's going to be gray matter on the roof. And it really took away from the presentation because you couldn't help but be drawn back. The other singers are just sitting there back, letting it happen. This guy was trying really hard, and never let him see you sweat, because it does. If it sounds like you're trying hard, your listener can't help but get tension themselves. So, posture, relaxed, try and think up and down. No, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. One thing that's important, standing is good. I remember one of the presentations last year, the person giving the presentation said that if you can, consider standing up to record your audio, because you just get that, you get that much more of a center in the way you stand. If you stand, and this is one that gets me all the time, I always have to work on it. Bend your knees a bit, because if you get what happens called knee lock, and if I'm in a choir concert and I'm standing for a long time, you're wasting a whole lot of energy down there because it's just just drawing your tension. The tension takes energy, and afterwards it can be so sore that it's literally you can limp. So again, tension is the enemy of this. So you just and I don't mean squat. I mean just ever so slightly bent. Okay, now I'm going to talk about resonance, and what resonance is. This is a definition that I shamelessly stole from Wikipedia. Thank you, Creative Commons, God in the sky. And it's the process where sound is enhanced both in the timbre, or like the tone, the EQ, and the intensity by the various air-filled cavities that we have in our bodies as the sound goes from our lungs through and eventually outside our mouths. And the resonators provide amplification and EQ. Right? In a synthesizer term, you can think of the vocal cords as an oscillator. They actually produce the original tone, but they don't give a whole lot of volume. Like if you pick up a solid body electric guitar, don't plug it in and play a note, you'll hear it, but there's no beef to the sound. And we are just full of resonators. We've got quite the kit when it comes to these things. Like resonators start in the chest. Anyone heard a singer who's been dead now a few decades, Paul Robson? Anyone heard of Paul Robson? Oh darn! If you can ever the original what's the name of the musical? The one that has Old Man River in it. Showboat. The one with him, and it's just that guy, like bass, and you could tell just he had such a beefy sound that his whole body almost was vibrating, and it was all from here. Like if you cut the chest off and try and talk from up here, you lose that chest voice. So chest voice, if we think speakers, woofer and tweeters, chest is definitely the woofer, where you get a lot of warmth and color. Throat. I mentioned before that also time check. When we're 10 minutes short, 10 minutes before time since we started late, can someone say, "Hurry up! You got 10 minutes late"? You just scream at me, unobtrusively. If someone could do that, because I can't see a clock from here. Thanks. Throat, most misused part of our vocal apparatus. You ever seen someone talk, or someone sing, and you can just see the chords? Because what they're doing, and I'll get to this a bit later, when they're breathing, instead of breathing deeply, they're taking a shallow breath, and it's like a tube of toothpaste. They're just squeezing it from here. It hurts to do. It'll ruin your voice. It'll rip it apart, and it's also very uncomfortable for people to listen to or to watch. If my wife's also a professional singer and singing teacher, and if we're watching TV and there's someone who's singing with their throat, we're just sitting there cringing. It's because it is painful to watch, because we know what they're doing to their voices. There have been cases where some rock singers on tour, they've had to basically inject steroids directly in here just to try and get through a tour. Yeah, I think it was Phil Collins had to steroids injected. Whereas there are opera singers out there who can do 4 nights of the Wagner Ring Cycle, which is a loud, long sing, and they can do it because they. Sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very different.
Yeah. Oh, it is. But the thing, they know how to use the voice.
How do those Mongolian throat singers do it?
The ones who can do the overtones.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. These are the folks who can, normally, the voice. You'll sing the fundamental of every sound has a fundamental frequency, and then there are various harmonics, the tonic, fifth kind of thing. And what the Mongolian throat singers, what they can do is they can control their resonances so precisely that they can actually get the resonators to produce that. I think normally a fifth. I've tried to do that. I know one person, another singer, who can do it here in Toronto. I can't do it. I'd love to. It'd be a great party trick. But although I did know one person who could whistle Mozart and sing counterpoint at the same time. Another great party trick. I can't do it either.
10 minutes left.
Oh, no,
wow.
no.
Well,
No,
there's
keep talking.
this room is empty afterwards, so because we started late, I'll keep going, but if you want to get to another presentation, again, just like yesterday, law of 2 feet, I won't be offended, at least I won't show it. So if you want to leave the end of 10 minutes, not to worry.
Just 20 after, so.
Yeah, I know, I appreciate that, but it's good to know. Mouth, I might speed up a little bit to get to some of the exercises then. The mouth, almost like the control panel in a sense, where you get the final sound, you get the enunciation, you can make things bright, forward. The pharynx and the nasal pharynx are, here. Also, part of it's also known as the mask. That's where people who can, without amplification, be heard from 100 yards away without screaming, they've been able to develop that mask because that's like the laser beam. That's the focus. Right? You get that. Like the knights who say "knee" is a great exercise for learning the pharynx. So hey, I have to work Monty Python now. That's not in public domain. Is that fair use by saying "knee"? Well, sorry, officer. And then there's the back, the rest of the pharynx. And it can be very, very useful because if everything's forward, you get a very sort of nasally, unpleasant sound. But there's also the pharynx in the back comes in really handy. Let's say you do a podcast on OS 10, and you've just landed an interview with Steve Jobs the day before the the Macintosh conference. He's going to announce a new product. He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you the scoop." That's very hypothetical. And you wake up with the worst cold you've ever had. Your head feels like a cement mixer that was allowed to draw out. If you speak normally, everything tends to come through here and sounds flat. If you push it back and around, use the pharynx to a degree, you can avoid doing this just by moving it backwards. And like some people can do it better than others. There are singers I know who are asthmatic, who have horrible allergies. That's why a lot of singers, if you go to a concert, they say, no perfume, please. They'll get allergic reactions, but they've learned these tricks to be able to still put on the show, still be able to sing by working around congestion. So this is why from this to this. Sorry, I'm not suggesting anyone had any hygiene issues, in case you were wondering. No. That's a trick you can do with the pharynx. And the pharynx, you also get what's called height in the sound. By spitting the air, and a lot of it has to do with visualization. Spitting the air, you get height, you get a bright sound without too much, without sounding too much like a duck. Okay, taking a breath. Taking a breath should not be something that creates tension. I was talking with my wife about this presentation a couple of days ago, and she said 2 examples to use on creatures that can show how to take a relaxed breath. She said babies and cats. They just, it's not, you're not gasping. You are thinking of drinking the air in, or even yawning. Okay, this is everyone's cue. Pavlov, yawn now. You're just drinking it in, filling it from the bottom. Now, I'm sort of rushing. This is where I'm doing some breathing exercises. These are the ones that my singing teacher back in the 80s would do with both of their students and with their choir. In fact, this is a subset. We spent the first 20 minutes of rehearsal going through these exercises and some really weird stuff. I was tempted. It's called Alexander technique. I'm not going to do it because it freaks people out until they've been taught about it, because it's doing things like me, 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 because the whole concept of Alexander is that singing is a whole body process. You need to have every part of your body physically connected. So what I'm going to do is the breathing exercises. If you want to participate, you will need a little bit of space because you'll be down on the floor at one point. That would have been a good way to sort of sell this session. See people on the floor engaged in heavy breathing. They'll just have to watch the video. But so if anyone wants to participate, great. If you just want to, if you like to watch, that's fine as well. I'll just sort of quickly go through these. First thing she'd start off with is breathing out to make sure you get as much air out of your lungs as possible before taking the next breath. And so the point of that was to learn to fill the lungs from the bottom up, as opposed to taking a little sip. So you just and you breathe in, and it's amazing that you find when you breathe out, you may think that there's no air left, but there's that last little reservoir. The next one that she would have us do is, and I'm going to move over here, is sit on the floor. You lean back, arms out. Yeah, this is actually Lamaze training as well. That's a creepy joke. And you breathe in and you feel your ribs, and particularly the back ribs, expand. and you normally have us do about 5 repetitions of that. I'm going to do 1 repetition now, since I'm in demo mode, and time is short. And again, you're feeling expansion. This is not no pain, no gain. This is not like weightlifting. You should not feel pain. It shouldn't feel difficult. You should feel, you're not supposed to feel the burn. You just feel the expansion. The next one is on all fours. This is where I guess it gets a bit kinky. And the same thing. You're breathing and you're feeling the expansion. And your back may rise a little bit as the ribs expand. I'm doing this fairly quickly.
It's reminiscent of yoga.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of.
Yeah, similar.
I'm willing to bet that now I'm not nearly flexible enough to do yoga. That's just not going to happen with me. But I think if you look at where the headspace of yoga is about how it's relaxation, expansion, and developing flexibility, I'm willing to bet that anyone who is adept at yoga would make a very good singer or speaker. I think it's a lot of the same things. We're not on number 4. This is, again, another sort of a stretch where it says sit back on your heels. I'm not that flexible. I cannot sit on my heels. I just get too much pain here. And what you do is you stretch and you breathe again. Again, feeling it getting into the...
Where do you breathe again? At what point in the exercise do you breathe?
Well, you get here, and then once you're sort of in the position...
You're breathing in or out?
Well, first I breathe in. You breathe in, feel the expansion, then breathe it out again. And we normally do that about 5 times. Yes?
How do you teach this to kids?
I'm not a singing teacher,
Oh.
so I should have brought my wife along, but she's not horribly into podcasting. I'd say the funny thing about kids is a lot of them already know this. That
It's intuitive.
yeah, they don't. They're not born ripping their throats apart. To do all that crying, they have to be able to have an effective vocal production system.
Get attention.
Yeah. If you're a baby with laryngitis, how do you tell mommy that you're hungry? What they have to do is you have to make sure they don't learn the wrong things. Like you ever seen some of those kid pop records, or like 8-year-old kids trying to sing like they're pop stars? That kind of sound. Mini pops. Ugh. Crime against humanity. The next one, we'd stand up, stand straight, and then really try and work the diagram. You're taking a picture of me, Sean.
Yes.
Oh dear, I'll get you for that. And you're really trying to be conscious of working the diaphragm. Very powerful muscle. There are a lot of singers who might appear fat. I suppose to me I am fat. But they're thickened around the middle because they've developed that muscle. They are just so strong. These are people who can also hold a note for a minute and a half and just go and go. I think I saw Bernadette Peters, I saw her in a show, and she just held a note. I could have gone for coffee and come back, and she keep it going. Yeah.
That's it.
Number 6, you raise an arm. Again, this is to develop a sense of expansion. Breathe in. Oh, we had a participation. Thank you, Sean. You've redeemed yourself for that picture. And again, you're not trying to rip yourself in half. You just feel the expansion. You do that a few times, and then you do it again on the other side. Again, it's all about expansion, getting energy, but not letting it go into tension or pain. Number 7, this is one where if I had people participating fully, I'd say be careful with, because done incorrectly, it can lead to hyperventilation, and you can't do it alone. And this is one to develop it's done to develop, I guess you could call it being able to be nimble with your breath control. If you listen to, let's say, some Baroque era music, some of the, let's say, Handel Messiah, stuff like that, where you'll hear singers do long runs on vowels, da 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 da, but it's just vowels, fast, like 16th notes, and that's all done with breath control because no one's mouth can move that fast. And it's all done from the diaphragm, or what one of my conductors calls the Molson muscle, because it's sort of done from down there, and you do that a few times, and it's from here. And the people who have practiced that, like just by the breath support control alone, it's almost like, think of a guitar solo, kind of, noodly noodly noodly, but they can do it just up and down the scale with their voice. And the last one is this was the one that's sort of used just almost as the final step, and then you'd be ready for singing. Would be, imagine a balloon inside your body, all around the middle, and you just open your throat and drink in a lovely, pleasurable breath, and just visualize the breath filling you're the Michelin man or woman, and just imagine the breath filling yourself. And it should be pleasurable. This should not be painful. Let's say we're doing for time. Okay, well, not too bad. Now I think, yeah, this is, I'm gonna throw in if you'll indulge me, my little gratuitous philosophical message. Who here hasn't done a podcast yet, but is planning to? Okay. What I would say is that, in a sense, podcasting is a lot like singing these days. That we have a culture or mainstream media who very much will tell people, you should not be singing, you should not be doing a podcast. Like, look at we all have our inner Simon. We're all living American Idol, where they're saying, "Man, that sucked. Go away, never do it again." And that's something that's been stolen from us. You go back. Prehistory, early history, everyone made music because they didn't have pros coming to do it for them. As opposed to today, we say, okay, we want you to buy this, listen to this, and don't you dare think for yourselves. So anyone who hasn't done a podcast, please do a podcast and prove them wrong. And anyone who thinks they can't sing, nonsense. This is my favorite quote. I have it on my Facebook. I saw it a few years ago. I just love it. It says, "Alas for those who never sing, but die with all their music in them." Don't be one of those people who dies with the music in them. And I think we're done. Thank you.
There's a guy I came across on YouTube called Nick Patera. He does the male and the female voice. How does he do that?
He might do probably a falsetto. And I'm which is sort of up here, it's complete.
No, it doesn't sound like that. No, it sounds genuinely like a female voice.
Okay.
Has anyone seen Nick Patera?
Yeah.
There are two ways, like for certain kinds of music, like especially early music, classical period, it calls for what are called male altos. And there are 2 or 3 kinds of male altos. Thankfully no longer done is the castrati, where the equipment was modified to allow the sound. I'm not going to go any further into that. Well, the people go to the concerts and they'd say, long live the knife, because they like the sound so much. And then quite often there are. He went for a competition for the Disney part to sing this song. I don't know if you can hear it.
Oh, I think I did hear this. Yeah.
This guy dresses up and he switches his face back and forth. I
I see that.
Can't hear. Wait, he goes to the female part now.
My sister's favorite song when she was a kid.
That's alto.
No, that is
Yeah.
really well controlled falsetto.
Yeah, because actually I was going to say there's a kind of voice called a countertenor, which quite often are basses, natural basses, who they do the falsetto, but they're able to bring enough of their other resonators into the sound so that there's at least a bit of a bottom end, so it's not sounding like a piccolo or something.
Yeah, he's got incredible control,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
And-
the upper register.
And I know a few countertenors, they all get lots and lots of gigs because it's rare.
That is rare.
He's a
Oh, yeah. So any other